Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Insight. I am Babla Jonathan. From 6th November 1982 to 6th November 2022, 40 years of leadership at the helm of state after taking over from President Amadou Ahidjo. President Paul Biya has been leading the Republic of Cameroon for 4 decades. In this edition of the program, we're taking a look at successes, challenges, failures, and perspectives. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is Honorable Daniel NGALLE ETONGO, Member of Parliament from the Ndian Division in the Southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, Bamuso Ndian 4 Section President of the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM, political party, and President of the Parliamentary Network for the Fight Against Tobacco Consumption in Cameroon. Honorable, you're welcome to the program.
The pleasure is mine, Mr. Babila.
The Eagle's Eye magazine qualifies you as a dynamic and eloquent MP. Do you see yourself in that?
Well, I think you are better placed to make an assessment of what the Eagle Eye magazine says about me. You know, sometimes it's very difficult to make an assessment of yourself. Introspection is sometimes very difficult. But I think if it comes from the Eagle magazine, the Eagle Eyes magazine, which is of the National Assembly, then I think it has some worth about it.
Now, what is your assessment of President Paul Biya's 40-year reign?
The first thing I have to say is that it is not everyone who can reign for 40 years. For you to reign for 40 years, you must have God's infinite blessings. Paul Biya happens to be one of the presidents who has gained the blessing of God. Come to think of it, 40 years is quite symbolical. If we were to go biblically, we know that some very prominent kings in the Bible reigned for 40 years. You have Eli, you have Saul, you have David, you have Solomon, and we can also say King Paul Biya has entered into that divine realm. And that he has reigned for 40 years, we can only congratulate him. The challenges, the successes, they are all there. We take all the domains, take whether educational, social, health, infrastructure, and all, name the rest. You know, when he came to power, he came with his communal liberalism, in which he talks about the New Deal, just like Franklin Delano Roosevelt of the United States of America. And the New Deal is a package of reforms which he set out to carry. And to the best of my knowledge, he has gone more than 80% in carrying out these reforms. You should know that I happen to come from Southwest, and more precisely from Ndian Division and Bakassi Peninsula in particular. In Bakassi Peninsula, just remind you that we have 5 subdivisions: Isangele, Bamuso, Kombo Itindi, Kombo Abedimu, and Idabatu. Remember that in 2006, we had a border conflict with Nigeria. And taking into consideration what Nigeria is population-wise, it would have needed wisdom to take the sort of decision that Paul Biya took, to get into peaceful negotiations for us to be where we are today. And come to think of it, in that conflict that lasted for 3 years, we lost, both Cameroon and Nigeria, just 50 people. It's historical. And we need to give Paul Biya a pat on the back.
Earlier you referred to the head of state as King Paul Biya. King in a republic?
Yes, you know that I queued up from biblical references, okay? I told you that 40 years, renowned kings in the Bible ruled for 40 years, and I mentioned Eli, I mentioned Saul, I mentioned David, and mentioned Solomon. And that Paul Biya, in that realm, okay, follows in that realm as a king.
Using the word king, referring to President Paul Biya, does that not confirm the idea that Cameroon has been transformed into a kingdom? And there's been a lot of talking about the possibility of unconstitutional transfer of power from father to son, from President Paul Biya to his son. Is it appropriate to use this word, king, referring to Paul Biya in this context?
Yeah, they may think, you know, and this is all about the worthiness of Paul Biya. People can speak today, they can call him a king, they can call him a dictator, they can call him all sorts of names. They have done so. It is thanks to that person, Paul Biya, that he is. Remember that you started by saying that he is the second president. And when we had the first president, we could not talk the way we are talking today, myself and you, Mr. Babila. You will agree with me. And so those are some of the achievements of Paul Biya. Press freedom. People can talk the way they are and even insult him. But what I am saying is that Paul Biya ruling for 40 years is testimony to the fact that he has the blessing of God Almighty. Because ruling for 40 years is not given to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Take, for example, we have political parties. You know, the presidents have been there. I think the highest should be UPC. Well, you know what is happening in UPC. They can hardly put their own house together. You know, our main political party, the SDF, came. It is now a shadow of itself. And so for Paul Biya to put this country together and for us to be where we are today is just something wonderful for which we have to praise him.
The victory in the Bakassi Peninsula dispute with neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria that you are attributing to President Paul Biya is also attributed to a leader of an opposition political party, Professor Maurice Kamto, who at the time was Minister Delegate to the Minister of Justice. And it is said that he was at the forefront, in the center of the maneuver as far as solving that conflict is concerned. What do you think about that?
No, when you say he was at the center of maneuver, I don't know what you mean by that. The person who incarnates the nation of Cameroon is Paul Biya. And he gives assignments to his collaborator. And at the time we are talking about, Professor Kamto happened to be one of his collaborators, just like the present Prime Minister, Chief Dr. John Ngute, was also one of his collaborators. And he did a lot of work coming from Southwest and from the peninsula itself. You know, he collaborated with the rest of the people who were involved to give them an insight into what Bakassi actually is. And so, you know, we cannot give the credits to any other person than to Paul Biya. He would have taken another option. And if he took another option, we wouldn't have been talking of what we are talking today. So, whatever credit we have insofar as the Bakassi conflict is concerned should be given to Paul Biya and nobody else.
Apart from the victory in the Bakassi Peninsula dispute, what are the other things that can be considered as major achievements of President Paul Biya in the past 40 years?
Babila, I don't think the issue of achievements can be overemphasized. It's just that, Cameroonians think that we should have a lot more. And I agree with them. Each human being would love to have more than he or she has. But the truth is that when we were children, just take an example of yourself, Mr. Babila, when you were a child in your subdivision, how many schools were there? How many hospitals were there? How many administrative establishments were there? From there, you can cut it across the national territory, and you see that this man has impacted every life. I mean, every life, the lives of all Cameroonians, be you of a different political leaning, be you of a different sex, of a different religion. Paul Biya has impacted the lives of all Cameroonians positively, whether you are a farmer, whether you are a housewife, and so on and so forth. Just the fact that I want to, take you from here. Just the fact that the Bakassi crisis was solved tactically, peacefully. If we went to a full-blown war with Nigeria, do you know what would have become of you, Mr. Babila? You cannot tell. I cannot tell. Maybe we sitting here today, we wouldn't have been alive. And so, just from that aspect of it, he has impacted the lives of all Cameroonians. Take schooling. You went to school, at the time you went to school, maybe you covered 10 kilometers. Your child is not doing the same now. Schools are closer to where your child is living. Maybe you went to school where you hadn't pipe-borne water. Your child is not facing the same problem. You went to school when health facilities were not available. It is not the same thing now. Get to all the domains, you would see that there is a net improvement as to when the former president was there. And why should we not say thank you to this man whom I call King Paul Biya? In fact, I can say a Solomon has come to judgment insofar as the Bakassi issue is concerned, because it needed only the wisdom that King Solomon had to solve the problem of Bakassi, and God gave him that, and he has solved the problem. And we need to say, Papa, thank you. I used this opportunity actually to tell him, Papa Paul Biya, we of Southwest and Bakassi Peninsula in particular, we are thanking you. That's why this 40th anniversary celebration will be characterized by pomp and pageantry in my area, Bamuso.
Yes, schools, the number of schools has increased, but in many of the schools, especially in the hinterlands, pupils, students are seen learning in precarious conditions. Schools without teachers, teachers going on strike over poor working conditions, and many other issues like this. Electricity, you talked about electricity as a success. Yes, but electricity is a problem. Power cuts, almost a daily thing in the urban centers of the country. In many areas of the country, there is no electricity, no electric energy supply. potable water is still a scarce commodity in many areas, even in the urban centers today.
Let me take the issues one after another. You have talked of schools. That yes, you have agreed with me that the number of schools have increased, but that children are still learning in precarious conditions. It is but normal. The population that we had when Paul Biya took over power has more than tripled. And so there is need for a lot more infrastructure and so on and so forth. Infrastructure is not something that you go to the street and you just pick. It needs money. And you know that Cameroon has gone through so many crises that are not caused by Cameroon itself. Some of the crises trickle from the international community. Take, for example, water. The number of people we had in the past, before Paul Biya took over office, has more than tripled. Cameroonians are even building now on waterways. Despite of what the administrative officers, the mayors are telling them, they are constructing in areas that make it impossible and difficult for the flow of water to be what it was in the past. This is as a result of population boom. And it is normal in a developing country. And so some of those things, we cannot just attribute them to Paul Biya. We have ourselves also to blame. A few days in Boya, the mayor of Boya was demolishing houses because people construct when they have not been given the authorization to construct. They construct without no permit, and so on and so forth. So some of these things, we are the cause ourselves. Electricity, you will talk of electricity. You know the efforts that the government has made with dams here and there to see that the level of electricity is boosted. And so, you see that, not that efforts are not made. Efforts are tremendously made, but the circumstances prevailing, also mitigate these efforts. Those are the things that we look into and we say that, oh, okay, yes, the challenges are there, but the President of the Republic is making commendable efforts.
Despite the dams constructed here and there, the problem of inadequate electric energy supply is still persisting. Isn't it a failure?
We should face the facts. It is true that we have electricity problem. The problem is not going to be solved overnight. Insofar as the country is dynamic, people give birth, we will continue to have these problems. The only problem is that we don't want the problems to be exaggerated. That is what we are talking about. And I think the President of the Republic is working such that these problems should not go off the board. Problems are everywhere. Where don't we have problems? In Nigeria, in Cross River State, Calabar, with which we are sharing a border, the borders, Bamuso is sharing borders with Cross River State, Calabar. Almost everybody has an electric generator in Nigeria. Here, to tell you that the problems are acute. Now, look here in Boya. How many people have electric generators? You can count, and they have it as plan B. Okay, when the light is switched off, is taken for one reason or the other, they may put on the generator. But not that they are using that appliance as something permanent. And so these are the sort of things that we look and we say, oh God, you have given us this person and we thank you for allowing us to have such a leader. I don't know what it would have been if we had somebody else who was not Paul Biya. I don't know what Cameroon would have been. And so we owe
something that Cameroon would have been better.
I don't think. I think Cameroon, to say the least, Cameroon would not have been what it is today. Positive, I'm talking from the positive perspective. Cameroon wouldn't have been what it is today.
Let's talk about road infrastructures. Is the country advancing, stagnating, progressing, or moving backward in terms of road network development?
To say that we are stagnating will be lacking appreciation. I think when I was, I don't know when I was then, the stretch of road from Kumba to Boya was handled by the then Prime Minister, I think it was Inoni or Prime Minister Mosonge, one of the two. But you see that with the passage of time, the road has deteriorated. And the government is making efforts to see that, a facelift is given to the road. It is the same thing with other roads that have been handled, by the government. And some of us, because of our lack of civic behavior, we destroy these roads. Come to think of it, how many roads have been destroyed within this period of crisis? Children burning tires here and there, some even digging the roads, cutting bridges. In my place, the bridge between Ilwani and Bongo was destroyed, was bent down. The bridge between Boa and Bonjare was bent down. And so some of these things, we are the cause of ourselves. And we begin to blame Paul Biya. Paul Biya is doing his own efforts. It is for us as Cameroonians in our own little corner. If each person in his or her own little corner did what he or she was expected to do, Cameroon will be an El Dorado. We have been blessed to have a country like this. But we take it for granted because we have not found ourselves in other countries where even to drink a cup of water is impossible.
The two major cities of the country, the political and economic capitals, are still not connected by a dual carriage highway, but a tiny highway. And there have been so many accidents on that highway number 3, National Highway number 3. The project of the dual carriage highway is still delaying because of payment of indemnity to the population, issues with that, and other problems. The road linking Bafusam, or the West region, and the Northwest regional capital is still in a dilapidated state, and several kilometers of third and F roads in the major cities and in the hinterlands, north to south, east to west, are in a very bad state. What do you say about that?
My brother, we should be very, very careful. You see, when we shoot our own legs and want to hold Paul Biya responsible, we make ourselves ridiculous. You have mentioned the roads in Southwest. You did not mention that of Kumba, Ikondo Titi Mondemba. I will mention it for you. It is also it is also in a deplorable state. I will mention it for you. You mentioned the road Bamenda to Bafusam and so on and so forth. You know that road, you cannot count the casualty that we have experienced in that road caused by us. How many machineries have been burnt by us? Machineries that went to that road to see that the road is given a facelift. The same thing with Kumba Ikondo Titi Road. You can quite remember that work had already started on that stretch of road. But our own children came, not only disturbed, but they took some of the people hostage and even killed some. And so for that, you are going to blame Paul Biya? No, I think we should be serious. Cameroonians, some of us, I know that some of us, just want, things to be better. But first of all, we should give credit to whom credit is due, that at least he is doing something. But we want the things to even be better. If you say that, I would totally agree with you. It's like in America. Do you think Americans are satisfied with the way they are living? Election is going on now in America. for governors. Go and find out what they are talking about. The well-being of citizens in America. So what you people, some of you people are saying, I think it makes us to even work, harder. You are helping us one way or the other. Some of the worries that you are mentioning, we're going to take them into consideration and see that, we even work. And that is what the President of the Republic is doing. But it's unfortunate that when some of these things are caused by us, who are beneficiaries of these facilities, we begin to make the situation, to make the country, we want the country to be ungovernable. Absolutely, this is what some of our children wanted, to render this country ungovernable. Mr. Babila, let me ask you something. Are you not surprised that till date, since this crisis started, the government is able to pay civil servant salaries till date? They said CDC is the second employer. They rendered CDC hopeless. People cannot go about their activities in Southwest and Northwest. The agricultural activity, the Northwest, which was a hub of education, there is nothing going on there. Everything has been rendered useless. Yet, the government is still paying civil servants' salary. To you, what is the government? How does does this not beat your imagination, how government is handling this?
If a teacher whose salary has been suspended because he didn't go to teach in some of those areas referred to as red zones in the northwest and southwest regions of the country listens to you now, you'll be worried. There are many of them whose salaries have been suspended. What would you say about those teachers whose salaries have been suspended?
Oh, I don't know. I would have loved that you give me a specific example so that I know what to say about it. You know that I am a civil servant and I have been a teacher before. When you abandon your duty, you are called upon to assume duty. And they give you a period of time. And if you don't assume your duty, punitive measures are taken against you. What you are saying, I can call it a hasty generalization. I happen to come from Bamuso, for example. When you go to Ikumbe Waterfall, the schools are not functioning. When you go to Baba, the schools are not functioning. And you can't blame the teachers for not going there, because those are the areas we call red zones. The teachers can't teach because they will kill them. And there is no government that will want to see its people killed. So what have we done? What has the government done? The government has redeployed these teachers. Some have been sent to Bamuso where they can work for the time being. Some have even been sent out of Bamuso to other areas where they are working. In the whole of my subdivision, I don't know one teacher whose salary has been suspended. If you know one in your own area, you can tell me so that we go on finding what actually happened.
There are many of them whose salaries have been suspended.
I want us to press the ball where it is. When you say teachers come to tell you, I have given you a palpable example of my subdivision, that there are areas which are no-go zones, red zones. Teachers can't teach there because it's practically impossible. And so the government has taken the measures to redeploy these teachers where they can teach. The measures that have been taken in Bamuso cut across the country, because this comes from the Minister of Basic Education and the Minister of Secondary Education. So, if a teacher is saying that his salary has been suspended, I want to believe that this is a teacher who has abandoned to teach where teaching can actually take place.
Let us go to the newsstands and see what the newspapers reported this week. Immaculate Fogwe with the press review.
The Guardian Post highlights some of the gains and challenges during President Paul Biya's 40 years at the helm of the state. Municipal Updates describes President Paul Biya as a man with uncommon destiny. The paper points out some of his achievements as head of state. The Post Weekender questions if it is a new deal or raw deal in 40 years. Cameroon Insider exclaims, the new deal at 40, not who wants, but who can. Another edition of the Guardian Post says, PCC Bassa Douala pastor hospitalized as fighting erupts in church. As reported by The Sun, Archbishop Nkia bemoans as many ex-students from Catholic colleges in the ecclesiastical province of Bamenda have become anti-Christians and they don't want to hear about the church. Municipal Update reports, to bolster local development, Cameroon gets inclusive guide. Officials say it will further engage persons living with disabilities in local development initiatives nationwide. As reported by the Guardian Post, at Cameroon Ballon d'Or, President Paul Biya wins special prize for outstanding role in the development of football. Till next week, this is Press Review.
Let's talk about two things which are today considered as major failures of the reign of President Paul Biya for 40 years. The security crisis in the northwest and southwest regions and in the far north region of the country, threatening the peace, unity and stability of the country, and corruption. What is your assessment of what the head of state has been doing about this?
When you talk about the crisis in these two regions, you are talking about security. I think even there, you will still give Paul Biya the credit. Why do I say this? No inch of this territory has been taken. No subdivision has been rendered ungovernable. That if you go to all subdivision, 360 plus subdivision, the administration is functioning well. None of these subdivisions has been taken. Now, it is actually a problem. The northwest and southwest, have a problem. And the President of the Republic himself acknowledged. In France, he was interviewed, and he said, as a Republican, he thought Cameroonians could live together and have the same vision of things. But he has come to realize that the Anglophones, as a result of their culture that they imbibe from, the British background, they have a way of looking at things. In fact, when Paul Biya said this, it was a tacit acknowledgement that the Anglophones have a problem. And I thought that just then, these our brothers who are worried would have said, oh, our father has acknowledged that we have a problem and let us lay down the arms.
What you say now has been interpreted as an acknowledgement of an assimilation attempt that failed.
Well, you may look at it as assimilation. Yeah, I am looking at it as a Republican who thought that we in this republic should focus on one direction. And I don't think there is any leader who would not want such a vision for his people. Okay, as a result of our own background, we thought, no, we should have our own way of thinking. And Paul Biya acknowledged, he acknowledged that, yes, this is how these people look at things, and came immediately called Cameroonians together in what we called the Major National Dialogue. And from that dialogue, decentralization was fast-tracked. Let me tell you, this idea of the specific nature of, Southwest and Northwest came from my own workshop that was chaired by His Excellency Mafani Mofsonge. And when we looked into the Constitution, I think 62 sub 2, we saw that there is an article that gives provision to a people for their specificities. And look at where we are today. In the Southwest and in the Northwest, they talk about regional assembly. In the rest of the 8 regions, they talk about regional councils. Do you know that some well-meaning Cameroonians, learned, don't yet make a distinction between regional assembly and regional councils? Because they don't want to face the reality. They don't want to exploit what has been given them by the President of the Republic. They are all negative. They don't want to see anything positive about it. So, you see, they still call, my own colleagues, I found my own colleagues who are Anglophone calling what we have here a regional council. You can imagine if that comes from a member of parliament.
Maybe that's because they are not seeing the difference between the regional assemblies and the regional councils. The regional assemblies in 2 English-speaking regions and the regional councils in the other 8 regions. Many think that many of those politicians, civil society leaders, think that it's not equal to what was in those 2 regions. The regional assembly is not equal to what was there before.
I don't know how many of them were in the past to know exactly what was in the past. Let us say that the government, Paul Biya has said, as a result of our specificity, you have the regional council which has 2 houses. The system of governance is not top-bottom. It is collegial. Okay? The regional president here cannot just take decisions like that alone. Okay? You must work with the commissioners. In fact, the commissioners are individuals on their own, because they tell the president what is expected in their various domains. Mr. Babila, is that not already a difference? Take what goes with it, the independent conciliator that arbitrates between individuals and the councils. Is that not already a difference? Why don't we exploit all this and even go beyond that, so that the government will say that, oh, what we have given these people, they have already exploited everything and they are even looking for more. You are talking about naming. I will agree with you that sometimes these things are naming. Just like those who are clamoring for federation. Because to me, the government has done something wonderful with this decentralization, with us having 10 regions. There is nothing more that a level-headed Cameroonian should look for. We should stay in our areas and develop our areas. In fact, I'm telling you that if we do this, we will turn these regions, decentralized regions, into federation without changing the names. And so, this is what I am saying. We have how do I put it? We have tainted our imagination so much so that we don't want to see anything good in the government. And so even when they give us something good, we will only realize that it was good maybe when it is no longer there. And so this is the mentality that I am calling on Cameroonians to change. You talked about security and corruption. The issue of corruption. You know, when our presidents came to Supreme Magistracy, came with moral, communal liberalism, moral rectitude, and said nobody will be spared insofar as corruption is concerned. And Mr. Babila, we are corrupt. We, the individuals, are corrupt. This is not to say that the president has not taken measures enough to see that corruption is reduced, because the essence is for it to be reduced to its barest minimum. We cannot eradicate it. There is no country in the world where corruption does not exist. What we want is that it should be eradicated. And which country on earth, this planet Earth, has fought corruption the way Paul Biya has fought it? I want you to give me example. His close collaborators, majority of them in the ruling party, without fear that, oh, this thing may backfire, he sends them to prison and so on and so forth.
But the results, Honorable?
The corruption is there, but it is not what it would have been when those measures, if those measures were not taken. I bet you Cameroon would have been a rotten country, completely rotten. Thanks to the measures taken by Paul Biya, that is why we are where we are. And the fight has not ended. It is continuing. And so it is time for us at least to say thank you for what you have done so far, and to say that we even need more, because nobody will tell you that we are satisfied. We are not satisfied. We are not. We have problems here and there. I told you I come from southwest, precisely from the Bakassi Peninsula, where oil is exploited. I would love a fuel station to be in Ekondo Titi. I would love a fuel station to be in Bamso. Why not Mondemba? Okay? These are the sort of things that we are clamoring for now. Not that efforts have not been made. Efforts have been made, but we still think more effort should be made.
We're going to take interviews of the week right now.
In a general point of view, you have been experiencing the day-to-day happenings of the country. Should we talk about the sector of water, where there are many areas where we don't have potable water in the country, in the 21st century in Cameroon? Should we talk of roads, horrible roads infrastructure? Should we talk about health, where people are still dying on a daily basis because of poor health situations in our country? What about the economy? Corruption, that we have won corruption. We have won the World Cup, we are called World Cup corruption for close 3 consecutive times, and his own ministers are already in prison for embezzlement, charge of embezzlement, and recently we have embezzlement charges hanging on his Secretary General and all that. So is that the type of 40 years? So I want to tell you that Cameroonians have really lived in dungeon. We have been into hell since for 40 years in power of President Paul Biya. I think the most regrettable thing that we shall never forgive Ahijo, that Cameroonians will never forgive Ahijo, is to this undemocratic manner that he handed power to President Paul Biya, whom he never had a vision before taking the country. And look at the mess that we find ourselves today. Today, tribalism is at its apex. We say the name of Tontina, Sardina, les anglophones, les ambazoniers, those are names that we're not hearing. Today, secessionism is at the apex. Nepotism, family members are giving priority to almost all sectors in the country as far as public offices are concerned. So which area would like leave and which area would like touch? So I won't blame him. He has done his own. I think my opinion is that's why I am engaged into politics, because we need change. The country is almost divided with war. It's a country that President Paul Biya took as a peaceful country. He took over power peacefully. But today, where are we today? There is rampant, not only physical war, there is inner war between Cameroonians don't want to see each other. This one, Bambileke, don't want to see this. This one called himself. No, that is not a Cameroon that Paul Biya took over. So if today, if they ask the same Paul Biya, what will you tell Cameroonians during these 40 years of hearing? I don't know what he will tell Cameroonians. So I've just elaborated just this few, and I want to bet you that it is our responsibility. He's of age, almost 90 years. There's nothing he can offer again. So I want to call on Cameroonians to see how we can correct the wrongs, because the damages are enormous. But it is never too late for us to correct the wrongs.
President Biya had a good plan, but the people that were appointed to help implement these plans, especially the ministers, especially the director generals and the rest, they have failed this nation. When I look at failure in Cameroon, I don't look at President Biya, I look at the people that he put in the field to work. They have failed him and they have failed Cameroonians. President Biya has ruled for 40 years. The only blame which I have for him is that it's not good to be in power for too long. Even if you are the best leader on earth, rule and hand over to others. That is the only area. Because it's not good to be in leadership position for too long. No matter how good you are, no matter how bad you are, it's good to pass over the baton quickly. So I think that President Biya was supposed to have passed over this baton long ago. Let another person come on board and use another strategy, because his strategy that he thought could work had not worked as desired, as expected. In as much as he has achieved in other sectors, there are many more sectors that have not actually had achievements. So he would have not been in power for long, because if you are in power and you realize that the strategy that you are using are not working, one of the best things to do is relinquish power, hand it to other people, and you can be an advisor. So don't stay in power for long. And this goes to other African leaders. Don't stay in power for long. Don't change your constitution to put you and keep you in power for long. If it is 2 terms, be in 2 terms and leave. So that other individuals may also bring their expertise in the government. That is where most African leaders have failed. The issue of longevity in power. He has failed economically. Because, for example, we were supposed to have had the Limbe Deep Seaport. That one is said everywhere. It was not constructed, and that nobody knows why it has not been constructed. It did over 40 years. The Limbe Deep Seaport was supposed to boost the economic nature of Cameroon. That is one of the strongest achievements President Biya would have had. Another great failure in the part of the CPDM government, which the head of state is the head, is the fact that they have failed in the ongoing Anglophone crisis. This one is very clear. The Anglophone crisis has run for 6, it's going to 7 years. It's a very simple crisis that would have brought people together to dialogue, to talk freely and come up with a solution. For 6-7 years, nothing concrete has come out. This is a big failure in a nation that is a democracy. Many people have died. People have lost their lives. This has just come to poison all the achievements, because the losing of lives, or lives, are more important than anything. So many people have died in this crisis. So this is one of the greatest failure of the CPDM regime, the Anglophone crisis that have not been resolved, and whose efforts of resolutions have not been clear to anybody. I cannot even say that corruption is a failure, because it is an aspect of governance in Africa. So they are not even seeing it as something bad. They pretend to fight corruption, but they are not fighting corruption.
40 years, that looks really long. It looks many years, but one thing that I will say practically is that Cameroonians have been going in what the Frenchman will call an unproductive track of le chien à bois et la caravane passe. What do I mean? 40 years, you have many complaints. 40 years, I remember going to the Parkovita, and some people talking of 40 years of suffering. For me, Mr. Biya made one big mistake. Apart from that, I wouldn't have said I have something else. The NOSO issue is a mistake. The NOSO issue is a mistake. Because up to there, I saw Mr. Biya, I saw Mr. Kamto, I saw Mr. Obasanjo like candidates that Africa could stand even and ask for the Nobel Prize. But what happened when in Bamenda, teachers and lawyers marched, the response was not about wisdom. However we explain it, we can understand the pressure from France in the leadership of the French-speaking countries and all, like he has all that on his back, but we wouldn't understand that the next step to do was to sit down and talk with the people. That was for me the worst mistake, because that came against all what Cameroon has been up to there, being an island of peace, an example of peace. Are we going to carry on morning, over 40 years? We have many dying, crying, complaining until they are put to ground? Or are we going to see how to accept the situation? And for believers, that's very easy to understand, because you get in the Bible, you get to Daniel. Daniel will tell you that, Daniel will explain that God is the one setting kings and removing kings. So Cameroonians should be looking forward now to find a solution. Not just talking about democracy, but find a democracy maybe that is applied to our tropical, that is a tropicalized democracy to Cameroon. Because Mr. Biya saw over 4 presidents passing in the United States. He saw over 4 presidents passing in France and many others. So what do we call being together with him, seeing the best way ahead? And recently, when Mr. Macron came, he didn't hide it so much. He'll say if he still he can carry it, it's going to carry on. So practically, I go back to this word of wisdom of Madame Funny. When you are knocking your head on a tree, your head is never going to break the tree. The tree will break your head. Let us go out with that wisdom, and I think something can come out. And now a hope. Looking at the achievements, I will always say things could have been worse. Things are not the best. Obviously, things are not the best. Things could have been better. But also, we need to recall things could have been worse. So I think we can still make it. We can still do it. We can go forward. Up to 2016, that peace, we were standing as an island of peace. But now from there, we lost also that also. Now, if you look at the, development as material in all, we can say we are late. That's right. But things could have been worse.
What will you tell Cameroonians about the difficult state of affairs in the country under the reign of President Paul Biya?
To Cameroonians as a whole, I want to say that we are not in the best of situations. There is no country in the world that is in the best of situations. We would have loved to be in the best. Why not? But circumstances prevailing in the world don't permit us to be in the best of situations. There are some of us also who are contributing to see that we are not in the best of situations. We don't have any other country. As I have said, and I used to say in Parliament, some of us do things in this country as if we have another country for which when something happens, we will leave this country and go to that country. No. We have to learn to know that we were born Cameroonians, we will be Cameroonians, we will die Cameroonians. And by so doing, we will put all our efforts to see that we contribute in making Cameroon a better country. There are difficulties, certainly, yes. Prices of goods are not what they are. This is not solely as a result of problems in Cameroon. It trickles from abroad. And so we should harness our efforts with that of the government to see that in our own little way, we contribute in redressing this problem. For my people in Bamuso subdivision, I know you would have loved to have a fuel station in Bamuso. You would have loved that royalties be paid to Bamuso Council, you would have loved many other things. Please, Rome was not built in a day. We are moving, we are forging ahead. You can bear with me that from Betika to Three Corner, Ekombe Waterfall, things are not the same. There is no village in Bamuso subdivision that has not been impacted by Paul Biya and by the CPDM regime. And so, let us continue to trust this regime and work together for a better future for Cameroon. Nobody knew Paul Biya will rule for up to 40 years. He has ruled for 40 years. And it is only God alone, if he has the energy and God gives him life and he thinks he can rule for more than 40 years, it is up to him to do that.
Honorable ETONGO, you are the leader of the Parliamentary Network for the Fight Against Tobacco Consumption. This is a problem that is eating deep into the marrows of Cameroonians, especially young people. What are you doing about it?
Mr. Babila, if it were within my power, I will tell you that smoking will stop in the next minute. But you know, it is business. It is business. It is true that we may call it a bad business, in that it affects our health and affects our health seriously. And that is why this network called Oxygen at the National Assembly and the Senate is leaving no stone unturned to accompany the government in sensitizing Cameroonians about the ills of smoking. In the last workshop that we had, our goal was to see that there is a law to limit smoking, or to see that smoking does not take place in all public places. And if, why not even to stop smoking? But we have seen that smoking cigarette itself is a big business, and that some people live by it, and so it is impossible to stop it. What are we doing? We are doing, the efforts now are to see that all Cameroonians are sensitized about the ills of smoking, and it will be left now for them to take a decision after they must have known that smoking is not good, smoking kills, smoking provokes cancer, and so on and so forth. The government has done a lot in that domain. You see, in most of these packages of cigarettes, you see they show there smoking is dangerous, cancer, and so on. They put the images there. This is as much as we can do, because human being, you are born free, and you are told, educated, to know to distinguish between the sheep and the wolf, and then to know what path to take. Just as we were created by God, and we were taught that, okay, this is dangerous, if you do this it will lead to your death, okay, if you do this you will go to heaven, for those of us who are Christians, and we are left to choose. There is SIDA. We are told that we have seen cases of people who have died because of AIDS, and they say, okay, use a condom. That is as much as the government can go, insofar as a cure has not been found. And so it is now up to you to say that, okay, I want to use a condom and stay alive, or I want to go in for direct sex, and bear the consequences. So what we are doing is to sensitize Cameroonians as much as possible about the ills of tobacco and all the derivatives. And now for Cameroonians to take the decision whether to still stay in smoking or to quit smoking completely.
Why is it difficult to ban tobacco?
Nobody should take care of your health more than you. It is you to decide that this thing is dangerous for my health and that I will not do it. Because insofar as you don't have the will to say that I will not do it, even if we ban it today, you will still look for means to consume it. That's the truth about it. That's why you hear about contraband and so on and so forth. So it is the individual who is concerned insofar as we of the network and the government is concerned. Once the individual decides that he or she is not smoking again, no matter how much money tobacco brings to the economy, tobacco will stop flowing into this country. So we are calling on Cameroonians to take seriously the hazards of tobacco and abstain from it.
Honorable Daniel NGALLE ETONGO, Member of Parliament from the Ndjian Division, Southwest Region of the Republic of Cameroon, Bamuson, Ndjian 4, Section President of the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM political party, and leader of chairman of the Parliamentary Network for the Fight Against Tobacco Consumption. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Babila.
Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Insight. Goodbye.
Imagine cash out with Orange Money at cheaper rates. You're definitely gonna be happy. No more stress to cash out your money. Need some urgent 10,000? Cash it out for 150 francs. What about your Njangi? Cash out 50,000 francs now for 750.